Meanwhile, vaccinations for minors have already started in some Asian countries, as plans for full reopening have been pushed by governments. Here are the details.
To prepare for another wave of COVID-19 infections this winter, the Japanese government will be starting its COVID proof of vaccinations and test at eateries this week. Officials said that the said trials will allow individuals who will present the said proof to eat in large groups and allow eateries to extend their operating hours. The government also aims to boost the pandemic-hit economy, while at the same time prevent the spread of infections. Meanwhile, the trial run will begin in Kyoto Prefecture on Thursday, which will be followed by Hokkaido and Fukuoka prefectures respectively. The government said that a Japanese restaurant in Kyoto Prefecture, a Japanese-style or izakaya pub in Hokkaido, and a hotel restaurant in Fukuoka Prefecture are among the eateries that will have to mock COVID vaccine and test proof. Japan explained that by using these trials as a framework, it aims to avoid imposing stringent measures uniformly while continuing its economic activity even if another wave of infections hit the country. 以上、日本からセクトリアニュースをお伝えしました。SMNI ニュース、Japan.
Earlier today, the South Korean government has begun the inoculations for teenagers who are 18 years old and below, and many of those who availed of the COVID-19 vaccinations have expressed their hopes to safely return to their classrooms. Some of the teenagers who are also students who got inoculated with Pfizer vaccine at Hongik Hospital in Yangchon District here in Seoul said they got themselves vaccinated to be safe from COVID-19 and to be permanently back to face-to-face classes. Majority of them also believe that if people get vaccinated, the country might get back to normal faster. Meanwhile, Dr. Lee Dong-kyung, a pediatrician on the site, said she makes sure that the children understand what signs and symptoms they need to look out for and went to seek help. Lee said that sore arm, pain around the injection site, fever are common and expected side effects that will eventually go away within a few days. However, chest pain, breathlessness, rapid or irregular heartbeats should need an immediate medical attention. Between now and November 13, 16, and 17-year-olds can get vaccinated at an interval of 3 weeks, while for 12 to 15-year-olds, vaccinations will not begin until next month. Earlier, the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency said that getting a vaccine for healthy children and adolescents who are not at high risk for severe COVID-19 should be a voluntary decision. Seoul Isobogo Kim Sang-imnida, SMNI News, South Korea.
As of October, the total number of donated COVID-19 vaccines that Thailand received from Japan has now reached a total of 2.4 million doses since July.
An additional 385,210 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines arrived from Japan to Thailand on Friday night. The series of COVID-19 vaccine donations from Japan began on July, when Thailand received 1.05 million AstraZeneca doses from its neighboring Asian country. The second donation arrived on September 8, which include 300,000 doses and 775 oxygen concentrators for severe COVID-19 infections. Another 300,000 doses arrived in Bangkok on September 26 to mark the anniversary of diplomatic relations between Japan and Thailand.
The Prime Minister of Thailand thanked Japan for showing the continued support in the country's fight against COVID-19. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชัดมงคลวิสมัยโกศล SMNI News ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
Chiripsu, 10 days after Chumban holidays, the daily cases of COVID-19 in Cambodia remain steady below 300 for 17 consecutive days. The latest update showed that Cambodia reported 267 new cases of COVID-19, increasing the total tally to 116,407. Meanwhile, recoveries continue to increase with the newest daily cases recorded at 311. Health officials also recorded 24 more deaths, and most of them are unvaccinated. Cambodia's active COVID-19 cases stood at 3,130. Health officials said that the consistently low number of COVID-19 cases led to the reduction of travel and quarantine restrictions from overseas, but preventive measures on businesses are still in place. Rika Perkong Simip, Kumeja Escobar, Podomin, SMNI, Cambodia.
Minglaba, 4 million more doses of COVID-19 vaccines arrived in Myanmar as cases continue to rise.
The vaccines, which were purchased by Myanmar to Sinopharm, arrived in Yangon over the weekend. So far, China had supplied Myanmar 26.6 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, of which 5.9 million doses were donated by Beijing. Meanwhile, as for COVID-19 data, the official health figures show that the number of COVID-19 cases has increased to 485,646 as 1,329 new cases were recorded in the last 24 hours. 42 new deaths were also recorded, increasing the death toll to 18,297. Out of the 485,646 total cases, Myanmar has a total of 486,851 recoveries since the pandemic began. Yung gunmate din sa Lekpate Chama San de Bela SMNI News, Myanmar din kapa.
Melbourne will finally end its COVID-19 lockdown, which has been the longest in the world. Melbourne City is set to lift its stay-at-home orders this week, as announced by Victorian State Premier Daniel Andrews. Moreover, some restrictions will be lifted by Friday. Melbourne City has a population of 5 million, and all of them have been under 6 lockdowns, which is equivalent to nearly 9 months since March 2020. The erasing of restrictions come as officials project that Melbourne's double vaccination rate will reach 70% this week. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Devi Suarez, SMNI News, Australia.
Starting November 1st, fully vaccinated Australians from overseas can now travel to Sydney without undergoing quarantine. Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced that the easing of restrictions of Australia's border is meant only for their citizens, permanent residents, and their immediate families. To recall, Australia shut its borders in March last year, and since then, only Australian citizens and permanent residents are allowed to enter the country, but they must undergo 14 days of quarantine. Meanwhile, the rest of the country still needs to vaccinate more people before reaching the 80% vaccination target. And according to the world data, 53% of eligible people in Australia have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Shina Selim, SMNI News, Australia.
After the confirmation of the federal government of Brazil and Johnson & Johnson, the Ministry of Health will receive a total of 36 million single doses Johnson vaccines by the end of 2021.
From the different batches of deliveries, the ministry will be receiving the anti-COVID vaccines until the end of December. Meanwhile, in an interview, the pharmaceutical company disclosed that a study by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration showed that when a vaccine booster was given 6 months after the single dose, the antibody levels will increase 9 times after 1 week and will continue to rise to 12 times more after 4 weeks of the jab. To date, Johnson has only obtained authorization for emergency use from the National Health Surveillance Agency, but it continues to work closely with the agency to get definitive registration of its immunizer in Brazil.
Vaccines authorized for emergency use cannot be utilized when the World Health Organization will declare the end of state of emergency due to the pandemic in the country. Transmitting to Sao Paulo, Chris Saclo, SMNI News, Brazil.
The National Health Surveillance Agency authorized the São Paulo's Butantan Institute to start its clinical studies in humans using the newly developed anti-COVID-19 serum.
Unlike the vaccine used to protect an individual from the virus, the serum helps to treat people who are already infected with the disease. The series of tests will be carried out at Hospital do Rim and Hospital das Clínicas of the Faculty of Medicine of the University of São Paulo. Volunteers must be 30 years old and above and have been tested positive with COVID-19 through PCR testing after 5 days and will undergo 2 phases and 3 stages during the testing process. The single-dose serum is injected directly in the vein and the patient should stay in the hospital for a day.
According to Butantan, with a mortality rate that can be higher than 65%, they will provide treatment to a large number of people that have difficulties in getting the vaccine and in many cases cannot take it. Transmitindo de São Paulo, sou Mike Denis de Oliveira, SMNI News, Brazil.
Fully vaccinated individuals in Kenya reached 1,208,987 as the country ramps up its nationwide inoculation drive. In the latest data of Health Ministry, 4,500,179 vaccines have so far administered in the country, with 3,291,192 people taking their first dose. Meanwhile, Kenya rolled out its nationwide vaccination drive in March 2021, following the arrival of AstraZeneca doses. Since then, other vaccines have arrived in the country, including Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson. To recall, Kenya has rolled out its vaccination drive last March 2021, following the arrival of AstraZeneca vaccine doses. Aliyewaripotia ni wenu Richard Musyoka, SMNI East Africa.
Subscribe to SMNI News Channel and turn on notification button for more news updates.